And Hassan Tampuli have joined us graciously to talk about some of the big issues of the day. And I don't think there's anything bigger right now than the fact that we are all called upon to pay 1 Cedi extra per litre when we buy fuel. Why? Well, because we need to buy fuel for the energy sector. Listen to this.
The total energy sector debt as at end March 2025 stands at $3.1 billion. This amount includes amount owed to independent power producers, state-owned enterprises, fuel suppliers, and fuel suppliers. Right, Honorable Speaker, as a result of non-payment of bills owed to ENI and Car Power, the World Bank IDA guarantee of $512 million and GMPC guarantee of $120 million were completely drawn down in the year 2024. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, the government is required to find an additional $632 million to restore these guarantees. Right, Honorable Speaker, to help raise additional revenue to fund the needs in the power sector, government is proposing an increase in ESPOM price of petrol, diesel, and related products. The impact will be absorbed by the gains made from the strong performance of the Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, I repeat, the impact will be absorbed by the gains made from the strong performance of the Ghana cedis. And this will mean that consumers will not have to pay extra for the price of petrol and diesel beginning today. Right, Honorable Speaker, our simulations suggest that there will be no increase in the ESPOM price of petrol and diesel in the next window beginning today if the levy is imposed. This is because of a strong Ghana cedi. Right, Honorable Speaker, the levy will serve as a dedicated source of funding to the power sector, and the proceeds will be earmarked for the procurement of essential fuel for power generation. The Speaker, this will ensure that Ghana enjoys stable electricity. Given that the current electricity tariffs paid by consumers does not include the cost of fuel used for the power generation. Mr. Speaker, the decision to impose a levy on petroleum prices is based on the need to find a balance between ensuring stable power supply while promoting the financial sustainability of the sector.
This is not actually to pay for legacy debt. What we are doing is that we've studied the system, we've done the analysis in the energy sector, and the basic truth and fact is that the liquid fuels that we buy currently is not part of the tariff structure. And so when you and I pay for electricity, even if ECG were to collect the money 100% today, none of that money would go into the procurement of liquid fuel. Meanwhile, we require over $1 billion this year alone to procure liquid fuels, because we should have increased gas consumption or production years ago. It takes on average about 18 months to 2 years to put the gas infrastructure in place. That is even if you start today. And so this should have happened like yesterday. Finance Minister has been helping a bit, though with much difficulty in helping us to procure liquid fuel. And so what are the options available? Increase electricity tariffs, fall on the Finance Minister for non-existing money, or share the gain in the reduction of fuel prices. Bear in mind, when we took over, fuel was about 16 Cedi. And so even with this 1 Cedi, even as I agree with you that you will pay some 50 Cedi extra, you will be saving 100 Cedi extra or 150 Cedi extra as compared to when we took office. And so yes, we would have wished to pass all the gains to Ghanaians. And that means that you would have to pay about 40 to 50% more in your electricity tariff situation. But governance is a balancing act, and that is why we are appealing to Ghanaians that will give you a reduction already from the 16 to about 13, which is about 3 Cedi reduction, so that at 13 or 12, we can also use 1 Cedi to sustain electricity for productivity. Whilst we take steps to increase gas consumption, reduce the losses, bring about efficiency. And already we are putting in place mechanisms that showing that in the electricity sector we are seeing some positive results.
So that last voice, of course, is the voice of the Energy Minister, John Jinapor, who spoke to us yesterday on the Super Morning Show. Let's get started, and I'd like to start with you, Mr. Terkper, because there's something that I think we need to put to rest. It's a bit confusing. we heard the finance minister speaking to Parliament. He said, and we heard him quite clearly, that there's huge debt in the energy sector, and it needs to be cleared. And part of the solution to that is this levy. And then we hear the energy minister say categorically that none of this levy will be used to pay debts, that it is all supposed to be used for buying liquid fuel. And these are two completely contradicting positions. Which one is the case?
I mean, both are correct, in a sense. If you have legacy debts, which is huge, which is the result of the misapplication of ESLA and its collateralization, and you are having issues with it, and then you also have the current challenges. The two are linked, in the sense that if you do not have resources, right, if you don't have resources to tackle the current challenges, which is the fuel, supply, which the Honourable Minister for Energy spoke about, it will worsen your ability to settle, the energy sector debt. Right. So they are interrelated. And I see clearly, the two, aspects from the two ministers, but I just want to clarify that they are related. Now, the levy is also structural in a sense, in that you are determining the price at which something should be sold, right? And there's a key element which is not covered, which is what Honorable Jinampo was talking about.
You're talking about the electricity tariff.
Yes.
Right.
So going forward, that would be a structural issue for PURC, MPA, the energy sector regulators.
We were made to understand that if they were to have added liquid fuel to the tariff, it would have resulted in a 45% increase in the tariff, almost 50% increase.
Yes, but that is where the Minister for Finance is coming in. I've always said, particularly in relation to COVID, and I believe I said it here, that the time to prepare for crisis is not when you are in a crisis. The time to prepare for crisis is when you are creating buffers, when the global environment is favoring you, such as gold in relation to the dollar, sanitizing the gold sector, building reserves. That's the time to build reserves, because we don't control external factors. In fact, we don't even control some domestic factors, drought, or the opposite of floods. And I recall your conversation, I believe, early during the flooding. And I said, there we go again. The first use, we were talking about the 10th anniversary, the first use of funds for that flooding actually came from the contingency funds, which we created before we went to Parliament. It was not replenished. Right? And there came bomb. We were caught funds down. Do we always have to depend on donors and others? We are a middle income country. So you are seeing here policies that are at play. We are also in a period of austerity where we are doing significant corrections, right? Of course, under the umbrella of the IMF, program, but which we sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. But maybe somebody can take this.
That's fine. Someone will come and pick it up. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry to the audience.
Not at all.
So we are in a period of austerity. The corrections don't always have to be imposed on us. We have had long experiences with austerity, which is why we set up this as a stabilization fund, the sinking fund, which would have prevented the debt default after HIPIC and whatever. So if, because of the build-up of reserves, because of, external factors, their impact on the foreign exchange and whatever, by all means, if we have to introduce something that would be neutral, right? That's what the Minister for Finance was saying. That would be neutral. They said two things. Then this is the appropriate time for it. You don't introduce a structural measure, after everything has been, we've gone past this phase. You just worsen. Now let me make another point. Let us remember that beyond the austerity measures that we are implementing now, there's a big structural reform, which is actually pillar one, the rationalization of the revenue, if you listen to His Excellency's 8 pillars. And so what we are doing now will come under structural scrutiny. It will come under, let me say, long-term, scrutiny. When we implement, we are implementing already, it's been announced, reforms like the rationalization of VAT, right? Reforms like what is an import duty? Reforms like the levies, some of which are being removed. So there is a big structural reform. On the revenue side, the main thing there, the two main things there is to continue the GRA reforms, particularly for the domestic, tax division of GRA, the unification of VAT service and IRS, which did not percolate down into the tax offices. And then, like ICOMS for customs, ITAS, I think that word has become a household name now. It was automation after West Blue, if you remember West Blue, which ICOMS replaced. The next phase was to be the domestic tax system and to interface or integrate the two systems, because we have a one GRA now. They are not separate departments. So that VAT invoices will be used to check what is being filed for income tax, for VAT refunds, VAT credits. Those big reforms are coming. And on the expenditure side will be the continuation of the GIFMIS reforms. Right. So I'm saying that much of what we are talking about now, the interventions that are needed to stabilize, power, to stabilize, fuel supply and others, which, by the way, if we didn't do, will have an adverse effect on growth, right? Because obviously businesses will not be operating well. They will have to increase expenditure through things like buying their own fuel and others, which would impact government revenue at this critical time. Right. I'm saying these will be tailored. So it might sound contradictory, but I see more like complementary.
I mean, you've drawn a link. I can see that. Is it not worrying that the two ministers, and these are the two main ministers that this levy concerns, right? The two of them are saying things that, unfortunately, even in the choice of words, are diametrically opposed, right? So I see the link you draw, but you hear the energy minister say none of it will be used to pay legacy debt. That is so categorical.
Yes, it's categorical in a sense that if you listen to the Minister for Finance, he alluded to the two. Now, if you listen to the Minister for Energy, he is clarifying the technical position of his ministry. And he's saying, we are tackling two things. We are tackling, the energy sector legacy debt. Legacy because ESLA was misapplied. We shouldn't forget about that. Because the reason I'm particular about this was that ESLA, the revenue from ESLA was calculated to the penny to settle 2.2 billion US dollars of energy sector debt back in 2015. In fact, we had to withdraw the bill to do that calculation on the insistence of the then opposition. They wanted to know, so we did that calculation, right? So why was ESLA misapplied? So he's saying there is that challenge, which is facing us. But as a result of which, we don't have room because we are paying the debt and other things. That's what the energy minister is saying. And therefore, given the current environment, which that is where the Minister for Finance was saying there is a balance.
Right.
In that we have favorable conditions, and we are certain that this will be neutral in terms of, when you say something will be neutral, yes, of course, plus or minus, right? And so this, so I think that yes, it came across as I listened to, the last 2 days carefully, but of course I have the benefits of cabinet brief questions and others,
right.
So I do understand, where both ministers, had.
Let me bring in Mr. Tampuli, and I suspect that while all this was unfolding, you had a sense of deja vu. I mean,
easily.
Being a former member of government, you've had to be part of some tough decisions being taken. But there was a walkout, right? And I wonder, what exactly was your protest? It's not as if there is an alternative, is there? We have to buy fuel, don't we? So what would have been your way of doing it?
Thank you very much. I think that today is Samuel Dami's birthday, I'm told.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very good.
So happy birthday. Happy birthday, Samuel Dami. Ogbojibo. So thank you, Kojo. So like you said, this serious sense of deja vu. Now, you recall that in the run-up to the campaign, we were told that within 120 days or within 90 days, we are going to scrap draconian taxes to alleviate hardships and ease the high cost of doing business. E-levy, COVID levy, 10% levy on bet winnings, and emissions levy. These came under direct focus of the then opposition. And when the budget was passed, the budget was read in March, just about 2-3 months ago, the finance minister was very categorical when he said that he's not going to introduce any taxes or levies. He's going to impose any taxes on Ghanaians, and then went ahead to abolish e-levy, 10% levy on bet winnings, and emissions levy, which was never collected anyway. So from 2022, we rake in 612 million Ghana cedis in 2022 for e-levy alone. 2023, 1.19 billion. And in 2024, we made 2 billion. Altogether, that's about 3.8 billion. And for the betting tax, we raked in about, for 2023 and 2024, 208 million. Nothing was taken for emission tax. So if you put all of these taxes together, they don't even come anywhere close to what Ghanaians are being forced to cough out for this particular E-levy Pro Max. I call it E-levy Pro Max. So we took out E-levy, and then we now have E-levy Pro Max properly fed to do a lot of damage to the Ghanaian people. Now, one would have thought that on the back of a strong Cedi, we are told that everything is okay. I mean, Yokidori, so fine. Let Ghanaians enjoy the fruits of this drop in the price of petroleum products. Don't forget, sometime in November 2022, prices of petroleum products had gotten all the way to 23 cedis, based primarily on the price on the international market exchange rate, because we hadn't introduced any taxes, levies, or margins at the time. And by March 2023, prices had come all the way to 13 cedis per liter. So that tells you that the government had the option of also introducing some 1, 2, or 3 cedis at the time. But we wanted Ghanaians to have the benefits of the drop in the price of petroleum products. Now, this government would have none of that.
Well, is that fair? The price rose to about 16. It's come down to about 12. and they are saying instead of it coming down to 11, let's keep it at 12 and give 1 cedi to energy sector. Is that
no?
too
But
much?
this is a government that says that we are not going to tax you. And remember, at the time that we were debating the budget, we had told the finance minister, these taxes that you are abolishing, what are you going to use to cushion yourself, to implement your projects and program? Then he says that there's not going to be any tax. So the word of the politician must carry some weight. You understand? You know, the political class, we have become endangered species. Because you say one thing and then you do another. So now Ghanaians are going to be watching to see, but is it not this same Atufosin who told us that there will be no taxes, there will be no levies? What has changed? You know what has changed? You know, when you dig a hole, you come back and fall inside that same hole. When we had this serious doomsday from 2012 to 2016 thereabouts, you know, we signed some PPAs, power purchase agreements, with different, IPPs, and inside those power purchase agreements, we had capacity charges, which were unconscionable. We had take or pay clauses, which ensured that whether you use the power or not, you pay. Now, all these things, created heavy burden on the Ghanaian taxpayer. In 2017, 2018, we had paid not less than $600 million for power that we didn't use, power we didn't need. It came up to about $1 billion in 2019. Now, the IMF, World Bank, they projected that we are likely to have some serious energy sector debts of about $7 billion at the time, if something drastic wasn't done. So we inherited $2.5 billion of energy sector debts. At the time that we were leaving office, we left $2.5 billion. We kept the lights on. And don't forget, in the course of that period, we had a net reduction in electricity tariffs. We further reduce, and then at some point we increase. So if you do the netting, there was a reduction. And within that same period, there was a time that Ghanaians consumed electricity for free during the COVID period. What was 1 year?
Back?
You understand?
Mr. Tampuli, are we not paying that back now?
You understand?
You made us pay.
And so what I'm saying is that yes, we imposed the COVID levy because we had a situation, and this is in direct response to the point that the Honorable Seth Terkper has raised about building buffers. Look, how much buffer can you build if there is some instability on the international markets or the global market collapses? How much of it can you prepare for? When there is something for the Ghanaian people to enjoy, please let them have that benefit. And by January 2025, by the time that President Akufo-Addo was handing over to President John Dramani Mahama, in terms of prices of petroleum products in Africa, Ghana was about the 11th most cheapest. Currently, we are 32nd out of 54 countries. So our prices have gone way higher comparatively to other countries that we compared favorably with. So what it means is that today we are doing about $1.4. That used not to be the case.
Mr. Tampuli,
so you see,
if I may, before you continue, so that you can build up on your points. You mentioned that fuel prices maxed up to about 23 cedis per liter. I remember around that time, I bought 500 Ghana cedis and I didn't get half of the first quadrant of my tank.
That's right.
The bar didn't move. But when you came into office, fuel prices averaged about 6 cedis and it went all the way up to 23 and it dropped to 16, right? Now fuel prices have dropped from 16 to about 11, 12, and the government says because of these gains let's take advantage of that time. The situation looks like it's different. It's not similar to yours. So why do you not agree that we have to take advantage of the gains now to solve the energy sector issues?
That's a brilliant question. You see, in January 2017, prices were about 4 cedis. And primarily, the price build-up is mostly made up of prices on the international markets, taxes, levies, and margins on the petroleum products, and also the exchange rate. Now, at the time, the government removed excise duty from price of petroleum products. What we inherited included the special petroleum tax, which was imposed at 17.5% ad valorem. So it even compounded because it was ex-depot at the time, if I remember correctly. Now we reduce all of these things. So if you observed, you come to realize that the price of the international markets didn't spare us. So when you see a reduction, naturally, just like I mentioned, from 23 cities to 13 cities, if there is a reduction, let the Ghanaian people feel it. If the prices increase, so what are you going to do now? If prices increase on the international market, what are we going to do? Because we can't control that. And don't forget, this is the summer driving season. It is at this time of the year that people crisscross, Europe, and then prices of especially petrol goes up. So what if the prices go up? What are we going to do? Are we going to continue to hold this? There's no sunset clause in it. You understand? It continues to remain.
Yeah.
Now, what is even the guarantee that by next year or in 2 years' time, this money will be applied for the purpose that we are being told? Never mind the confusion in the minds of the finance minister and the energy minister regarding the real purpose of this. But they keep saying something which we disagree with. Because in the price build-up, they factor in the price of fuel.
You mean the tariff?
Exactly. They factor in the price of fuel, the PURC.
The price of gas.
The price of fuel.
Which is gas.
Gas.
You understand?
Not liquid fuel.
Now, you see, that is debatable.
Mm-hmm.
Because they keep saying that it does not. If you come to downstream petroleum sector, everything, including even the driver's mate, the tanker driver's mate, his clothing, his shoe, everything is factored into the price buildup.
Is this where the UPPF comes in?
Exactly. You understand? So I'm not too sure where, it's all about smokes and mirrors as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
because you see, these things are factored into, and when the electricity rates tariffs were being increased, what were we told? To 14.7%. What were we told? To pay to clear legacy debts, isn't it? So couldn't that one clear the legacy? In any event, Gold Board is doing magic. He's doing wonders. 2.7 billion has come in. So why are we imposing, all these taxes on Ghana? So you buy 1 gallon of petrol, you pay 4 cedi 50 pesos. So the people in my constituency, the farmers, they are going to start feeling it away.
So your challenge is that even though when you took power, fuel was around 4, 5, 6 cedis, it increased to 23 cedis, came down to about 16. And there's a new government. The Cedi has appreciated. Fuel prices have dropped from 15, 16 to about 11. And they want to make hay while the sun is shining by taking a Cedi extra from us to be able to pay this. You don't think that should be the approach?
No, we think that when prices increase, let Ghanaians pay.
Okay.
When prices drop, let Ghanaians have the benefits of those. So that is the price that you pay for a deregulated market. So it's no longer a centralized market. And Honorable Seth Terkper was the finance minister in July 2015 when we deregulated the downstream petroleum industry, so that prices are determined by the interplay of all these factors. When they go up, you pay more. When they come down, you pay less.
Honorable Tampuli, one thing that is surprising me here is that your government took advantage of situations then. Honorable Terkper's government is taking advantage of situations now.
Which situations?
I remember when E-Levy was being introduced, we were told that the fact that a lot of us were doing digital payments and using digital money was creating a bigger economy, and we should take advantage of that economy to make some money to support the economy. So that was the advantage you used. Now this government is also getting a very good deal because the Cedi is appreciating and they want to take something back. Is it not just fair for them to go along and do that?
When you come, when you say that, there's no innovation in the imposition of taxes and levies and all of that. It is the usual petrol. We've been doing this thing since the days of Dr. Kwesi Botwe. Those days where he reads the budget, then he will announce new prices. That is what we are doing. But the issue of e-levy was an innovative one. We wanted to expand the tax base. You understand? So that we don't put everything in one basket. Whilst we are reducing, taxes somewhere, so that we spread it out. And don't forget, if you are not sending Momo, you don't pay e-levy.
This one,
you understand?
Fuel, you don't.
Whether you like it or not, you pay. Even if you are working, you pay. You know how price of petroleum product affects everything in this country. Even the cost you make, you pay. It affects practically everything. But e-levy, if I'm not sending any money and I want to walk or even pick a car, then I don't need to pay e-levy. So it was more of an optional kind of tax. You understand? Okay. Betting, if you don't go to bet, I don't even know what it is. I don't even know how they do it. So if you don't bet, you don't pay tax, betting tax. But for whether you like it or not, the market woman, the housewife, everybody, the farmer, everybody is supposed to be suffering from this new levy that is. All right,
if you just joined us, it's 9:05, and the conversation is getting more and more interesting. Hassan Tampuli is the last voice you heard. He's the Honourable Member of Parliament for Gushegu. He's also Deputy Ranking Member on the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament. He's here alongside Mr. Seth Terkper, who is the Presidential Advisor on the Economy and a former Minister of Finance. When we come back from these messages, I want to know from Mr. Terkper, is this forever? What is the sunset clause on this one? When do we stop paying this one Cedi? Is it an interim measure or is this our new reality? I also want Mr. Tampuli to answer the question I asked, which he didn't, which is, how would you have done it? How would you have paid this bill? Or are you saying the problem doesn't exist at all? Let's wrap quickly on this issue of the 1 Cedi levy, okay? And I mean, the questions that are outstanding are these. First of all, Mr. Terkper, when will this end?
Yes, thank you. I was enjoying the lecture on sunset clauses.
Yes.
I remember that the ESLA was to have a sunset clause, which going to happen because we were then beginning to pay VRA. We had a term sheet for 600 million. US dollars to pay the IPP, so it was becoming certain the path, and then we're required to go back to Parliament to have a sunset clause for ESLA. We know what happened to ESLA. I'm not going to, to repeat it. We even collateralized it to the loan. Today that loan is impaired. Today, as Honorable Jinapor said, the guarantee which supports the energy sector has been called by the World Bank, and an experiment which the World Bank was beginning with Ghana to benefit the whole of Africa is gone. It's gone in the winds, so I think that we should. By the way, the last I'll come to your question. The last agreements that we sent to Parliament, 2 of them were the put call option. We were moving away from take or pay. So why did the last administration continue with take or pay? They signed some, Damandi and the other one I forgot, were put call option, which gave you the option to to take. Of course, there's a reverse that, you may also, in your need, have to go to the negotiating table. But we felt that was, so I think we need to, correct, that. So I did mention that this was part of an austerity measure, which was a part of a correction of a structural measures, 1. And then 2, I said that the tax reforms, the comprehensive ones, will be rolled out, with the media review that is coming, and then going into the 2026 budget, we would have clarity on some of this, we would have studied, the the trends in the international market, which is also affecting, and we would come back, to streamline some of the things. There's more to be done, as I said.
But should that not all be done before? I mean, don't you have a model that you use to make even the calculation of how much?
Remember, we've been out of power, and remember, we are seeing, new things emerging. When JM, His Excellency, mentioned the 8 pillars. Remember, he split them into 2. Those which were a reset of things that we were doing, like the sinking fund, reserve stabilization fund, and the rest, which we need to continue, depleted. And then there are the new ones, value addition, not so new, but which we didn't have the opportunity. We spoke about export, in your introduction. Exim Bank, he mentioned Exim Bank, positioning it to help non-traditional exporters. So I think a little while, things would come. We've just come out of a transition, the whole issue of, COVID. Yes, it's interesting. COVID was severe. We don't deny it, but the last administration got 2 points on that, quick one. $6 billion US dollars inflows for COVID. I don't want to be counting it. I've said it on other, and then remember, the fund said in the very program, that they entered, which we are continuing, that there were pre-existing, conditions, right? And remember, when we were required and urged to join the debt suspension, by the World Bank, which we eventually went into, we said no. We're a proud nation. We're not going to go into a fund program. We're not going to. When in actual fact, we knew that the things were terrible and we were about to default.
So we should wait for the mid-year review and the 2026 budget to see whether or not we're going to have this tax scrapped eventually.
Not necessarily, because as you can see, at every opportunity, when clarity comes on an issue, we'll come public with it.
So there's currently no clarity on that?
There is clarity on the policy. As I said, the policy is structural, right? PURC, MP, and others will look at the pricing structure, and do some work on it. Right. Okay. Where there is less clarity is you don't control the global factors. You don't control the Cedi versus the dollar. Right, you don't control the tariff policies in the US, which is, so it will be bold, right? But we're saying that as and when these things happen, there will be, frequent, updates.
All right. So let me bring in Mr. Tampuli, and I have to press you, unfortunately.
Yes. Sure.
So, I mean, the problem does exist. That's the reality. We must buy fuel, otherwise the lights will go off. So, how would you have done it? How would your government have done it?
Just as we have done it over the 8-year period that we stayed in government, we would have continued to find a way to find a way to continue to keep the lights on.
Well, I mean, that sounds like hopes and dreams. How would you actually have done this?
So Honorable Seth Terkper, made allusions to the ESLA bonds that we floated to deal with some of the legacy bonds, legacy debts, but most importantly, the agreements that we inherited, draconian and unconscionable as they were, you had difficulty terminating them. So some of them we had to defer. Some we attempted to terminate. It ended up in arbitration and so on and so forth. But before the coming of this current administration, we were in serious negotiations with a lot of them, a lot of the IPPs. So we were able to shave off, I don't have the figures right here, but we were able to shave off significant, amount of money that, we owed in that sector. So we didn't think that it was useful to impose additional burden on the Ghanaian taxpayer. The Ghanaian taxpayer is already overburdened. And the current government, when they were in opposition, continuously reminded us that the Ghanaian is overtaxed. And His Excellency then candidates will start listing all the taxes. What do we see? Now we have an increase in the taxes. There hasn't been any such audacious imposition of taxes on the petroleum sector like 1 cedi. I don't remember. Normally it's 10 pesos, 30 pesos, 49 pesos.
So would you rather have increased the electricity tariff by almost 50%? Would that have been your alternative?
No, that wouldn't have been an alternative.
So how do you have bought fuel?
An alternative. Like I said, we continued to keep the lights on. How were we doing it?
That's what I'm asking. Exactly. How would you have done this?
That is what we are doing. And look, nothing has changed. What we have right now is that the government has scrapped taxes. Where are they going to get the resources to be able to implement their programs and projects? So this money we are seeing is not supposed to be taking care of any legacy debt. So you wait, I'm telling you. Next year, next 2 years, we'll come back to this studio and we'll discuss this thing. It's supposed to take care of holes in their budgets. Significant holes that have been created in their budget. So really and truly, even the energy minister says that this amount is even woefully inadequate. So what are they going to do about the hole that continues, to exist? What are they going to do about it?
It's a big issue, and I can see Honorable Seth Terkper smiling at me. Honorable Terkper, you are confident of the economic management of your administration, aren't you?
Yes.
You are very confident of that.
Yes,
so
I
you
am.
Are confident.
I am because as I said this as a compliment that we have a finance minister who had been from Parliament, had been my deputy, was in charge of the budget, and I made this when he was appointed. Honorable Jinapo, at a point I put on the power hat, run the energy ministry.
So you are very confident.
I'm confident about the team.
The leader, you are confident in him. Finance minister, you are confident in him. Energy minister, you are confident in him.
And the president.
Yes, that's what I said. The leader.
Yes. Just a quick one. And the president, who said just yesterday that we are going to ring fence and account for this revenue, and posted a warning to the Minister for Finance. Remember, this is the president that ring fence the revenue flow for Terminal 3, ring fence the revenue flows for port expansion, supported the ring fencing of the sinking fund which we were using to pay down. So we are not talking about things which we hadn't done before.
So this confidence transfers to your confidence for managing the exchange rate, doesn't it? That you can keep it between 10 to 12 Ghana cedis to the dollar.
It's not just the exchange rate.
Okay.
We are managing volatilities, some of which we don't control. Even domestic, we don't control drought. We don't control floods. The opposite, of the same coin, right? So we'll put debt in a band. We were beginning to do it before we left office. A band of 50-55, a floor, and a band of 60-65 ceiling. Exchange rate. What His Excellency was alluding to is that when you have that band, then you are conscious that when it is going above, 12, you have to do something.
Yeah.
He mentioned the structural one being EXIM, complementing the gold board. Sorry, just a minute. And therefore, and then also, remember we are building reserves.
Yeah.
Right? Which is the stabilization fund, again as a precedent, which is the sinking fund. We are building, and then the oil revenue, the stabilization fund, and they are actually part of Bank of Ghana's core reserves. When you hit problems, that's when you draw your reserves. That's a counter-cyclical policy.
So can we be rest assured, Ghanaians, the business community, that knowing all these things, we are going to see stability between the 10 and 12 to enable us to plan?
They are going to see stability in policy, right?
Not the exchange rates.
Because you don't control every factor. And I'm saying that we are going to manage within a band, right? But you'll be hit along the way by severe factors. I don't downplay COVID. My only point about COVID is that there were flows that came into the economy, from IMF, SDF, to COVID loan, to World Bank loan, African Development Bank loan, and at the time we were being said, take advantage of this, come and restructure, knowing very well where we were. Right, so that's the point. Nobody can give you the type of assurance that you are asking because you don't control the
system. The president did. Yes, and I'm also
he said we're going to manage. No. Please. The president said we're going to manage within those bands, and I've given you examples,
using
of
the
other
sinking
banks.
fund, stabilization fund,
Exactly.
and all these
That's
things.
the essence of it.
Yes, so that's exactly where I'm going.
And
to.
then the structural measures are going to come.
So if you are going to do all these things, put in place the sinking fund and manage it better, stabilization fund, the structural measures, then we should get a sense that even if globally and domestically there are shifts here and there, we can still work within that band. And
that is because you would have created the reserves in good times, and you would be able to draw down on it, right?
Okay.
Until you get a very severe crisis, which everybody would accept, like the global financial crisis, like the COVID, and before that the depression.
Russia-Ukraine war.
Russia-Ukraine war, of course. The Russian embassy has answered that, already. But let me make the point that let me just give you one example from the U.S. Okay. When the U.S. faced the global financial crisis, and this you can Google Bloomberg is there. When the Fed bought the securities, right, from the banks, and they stopped, letting Bank of America and the fall just like best sense. When the Fed puts those securities back, like the way we want to recreate and put, the pension, the bonds and other back to the domestic market, right? The market was healthy. The market value of the bonds rose. The Fed made a profit of $3 trillion US. You can Google it, and gave it to the Treasury. The Treasury did not spend, the US Treasury. They kept that money, right, as a buffer. And those were the funds learning from the impact of the depression and the impact of the global financial crisis. Those were the funds that were used to give the grants, for the COVID vaccines and the rest. They were nimble, better managed than they managed the two previous crises. And so I'm talking to President. They couldn't control COVID, but they prepared for it. And that's my point I'm making.
Yes, and I'm asking you this because the Chamber of Bulk Marketers have spoken, oil marketing companies have spoken, other watchers of the economy have spoken, and some make the argument that even the electricity tariffs now, we pegged the exchange rate for the tariffs you are paying now at 15 cedis to the. So if due to the confidence you want us to have in you, let's say the highest ceiling we are even going to have is 12 cedis to the dollar. On the tariffs, you are making a windfall of 3 cedis to the dollar.
Delta.
Why don't you?
The president said we're going to apply. But let me also say that this is where we are urging GRA to do more education.
Okay.
Forex losses are legitimate, expenses, which businesses can claim unless you don't file, your returns, right? Some of the changes and things that we're talking about, they are legitimate, and by the way, businesses don't pay the quarterly income tax in advance as it used to be way back when Professor Mills came. He made it in arrears, right? Now the other point is, I listen carefully, right? The liquidity issue that is being spoken about. When me and you, all of us sitting here, drive to the pump, we pay cash. We pay cash.
I pay Momo.
Yeah, we pay cash. So I'm saying that the liquidity issue which the industry is raising sometimes can be a bit exaggerated, and I say with caution, because the consumer is paying cash, right? So they are not, it is not including the levy. So it's the consumer who is paying for it, right? So yes, you may have liquidity management, but it's not absolutely the result of introducing the levy, right? So it's up to liquidity management. So the chambers will also have to, I had this issue with the bulk oil distribution companies, if you remember, when we wanted to do the forest losses and the rest. So these are familiar terrain as far as I'm concerned. And we'll engage the industry. The Minister of Energy is engaging them. GRA would have to also do some education, to make sure that.
This is the Super Morning Show. I guess this morning the Honorable Seth Terkper.
Prior consultation of stakeholders. It is after the tax has been imposed.
Yeah.
I'm responding. I'm responding to
no issues. Stakeholder was engaged.
I'm saying I'm responding
to the imposition of this.
Honorable Tampuli and Honorable Terkper, based on where Kojo and I are sitting, when you say something and Honorable Terkper responds and he says something and responds, we track back to when you were in office, and it was
No, but E-Levy, there was broad consultation. For instance, you know what?
And
There was, even though there
don't do it,
was,
but you did.
of course, but there was broad consultation. But did you ever hear anything about this E-Levy?
I want to hear you.
On the E-Levy.
Did you ever hear anything about this ESLA?
Excuse me. On the
before
E-Levy.
it was passed. Even in Parliament.
No.
Even in Parliament. This plan is surprise on us.
To be fair.
Even in Parliament. You just go to bed and then you wake up the next day, you are paying 1 cedi more.
Okay.
I mean, this is bad enough. But you see, most importantly, we speak of, economic stability, Cedi stabilize and all of that. The accounts will ask, no crack around this.
Oh, are you not happy that the Cedi stabilized?
No, but you see, but you see, at the end of the day, how do you feel it in your pocket?
There's a lag.
We are political beings.
There's a lag.
Has the price of cement come down? You understand? Has the price of tomatoes come down? Price of goods and services, have they come down? That is what we use as a common people to understand whether the economy is doing well or not.
Yeah.
So we used to give them all these, GDP growth and so on, inflation, single digit. They said no, they don't even want to listen to any of them. What has the money been put in our pocket? That's what they used to tell us.
All right.
But you see, it's bad enough that the government wants to impose some taxes on the people of Ghana, that they don't even care about consulting any stakeholder. The BDCs, the OMCs, even members of parliament. It is the morning that we were told that something is going to come. As to exactly what is going to come, we don't know.
Consultation there is never too late. You proved that with E-Levy.
Oh no, but you have done the thing already. So how do you consult me after you
went on a
have
town hall tour after you had introduced it in parliament? So
no. If you remember, E-Levy was not passed in a day, and E-Levy was not passed even 3 months after its introduction. We still kept on going back and forth. Parliament, it was stalled. We went back and forth. Still continue to engage people.
This is our position on E-Levy. If I may just settle this, quick one. This is our position on E-Levy.
Okay.
In 2017, in fact 2013, when we did the VAT Act, VAT is a tax on consumption. So we extended the VAT to non-core financial services. Simply put, if you go to the ATM to withdraw, you are paying a fee. It is that which should attract the tax, right? If you send Momo, you are paying a fee. That is what should attract the tax. It is not your salary which you received, which you put on your phone. When I take my salary, because I'm old school, I put it in my pocket. And then you send, money. The original proposal was taxing the fact that you were making a transfer. It's taxing savings and investments. Anyway, it became necessary because the tax on non-core financial services, not investment, no savings, was repealed in 2017. Right? And so the review of the VAT, which anyway has been done with technical assistance, will revisit all of these issues so that we have rationale. Let's understand, VAT is a tax on your expenditure, not on your savings, not on your investment. So, and VAT is flexible. You see, VAT is on all expenditure. Otherwise, you will be taxing all the economy, right? Which was goods and services, and some services are architectural, accounting, and the rest. And new services would escape.
So what you're saying is that as part of the review, we can expect the consideration of VAT on the fees for mobile money transfers.
We are going to let's say no core financial services. Mind you, it's not just the services are being done on mobile phone, restaurants everywhere. It is not just what's the difference between you paying and somebody keeping your money in the pocket, taking and pay. Once the service is rendered, right, it should be covered by the VAT, because the definition of VAT is that just like income tax, right? If you earn income, the tax kicks in.
So if I send Momo to Kojo Yankson, for example, the charge by the telco, you are going to charge the VAT on that
No,
charge.
in principle. I'm saying that in principle. I'm talking principle. I'm saying that in principle.
Not that you are going to do.
No, in principle. Well, yes, that's part of the study.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
I'm saying that in principle.
So it's being considered.
It is expenditure.
Okay.
You know. Yes.
All right. Listen, we're going to come back and touch on one more issue
they still have
because there isn't so
on their
much
side.
time. But we have to come back and touch on the fact that Ken Ofori-Atta is wanted again. Stay with us. Let's talk about Ken Ofori-Atta. He's re-wanted, for want of a better word. The special prosecutor has declared it so. But it's become a sticky issue because his lawyers insist that the only reason why he's not here is because he's ill, and they have provided evidence that he has cancer and has to undergo treatment for it. There are some who suggest that the special prosecutor is being high-handed. The man has communicated his situation. Why not show some, sensitivity? What does the former finance minister have to come and do? For which reason he's being forced, even off his so-called sickbed, to come to the office of the special prosecutor. I want to start with you, Mr. Tampuli, on this one. The special prosecutor's position is quite straightforward. The stage of the investigation requires the physical presence of the suspect. Full stop. So if that physical presence cannot be provided, it should be because it medically cannot be provided. In other words, Mr. Ofori-Atta cannot travel. It's not whether or not Mr. Ofori-Atta is unwell. It is whether or not Mr. Ofori-Atta can travel. And that has not, the fact that he cannot travel has not been proved by Mr. Ofori-Atta. Therefore, he's wanted. Simple. Anna.
Thank you. So this is a matter that has been playing out, I think, since the beginning of the year. And there have been letters between the lawyers of Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta and the office of the special prosecutor. I think that we have to lay a certain foundation in this matter, that every public officer should know that there is a day of accountability. All of us. That when you occupy public office, one day you'll be called upon to come and account for your stewardship. So the former president has told all of us that if you are called to go and account for your stewardship, please do well to show up. So with that mindset, I'm not too sure if Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta is trying to avoid accountability. I'm not holding brief, but from what I hear his lawyers say, Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta is unwell. They have written to the office of the special prosecutor and they have attached, letters to that effect. And they have even indicated the hospital where he is seeking, the medical attention. And about the next, 10 days or so, he'll be going under the knife. Now, the OSP insists that he must bodily show up. Now, what we must know is that even if Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta shows up during the course of interrogation, he can decide not to talk throughout the period. Under our laws, every suspect or accused person has a right not to self-incriminate. So the lawyers are proposing that there are medium through which you can reach Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta in spite of his current situation. So the OSP insists that you must, and I think OSP has every right to make that insistence, but I think it should be measured in the way that he says, because you don't even know the extent to which the man's prostate or cancer has developed.
But that's his point. That has it developed to the point where the man cannot travel?
I see there are options available. The lawmaker should be deemed to know more, and so we pass laws to assist us as if a day like this would come. There is a law known as Mutual Legal Assistance Act that was passed in 2010, Act 807. And under that law, Section 40, 41, 42 provides mechanisms for authorities in Ghana, for instance, to seek assistance from other countries. And in this case, the United States is a member, is a signatory to this particular, convention. So it's one of the things that the OSP can seek to do, to engage him either by, video link, or you can also apply, to the US government for them to provide, assistance for you to be able to go to the locus, to go and then do the engagement with him. Don't forget that the OSP can proceed to trial without even Kenneth Ofori-Atta's, presence in the country. This lady who used to be at Maslock, Cedi Tamakulu, right? She was tried in absentia, convicted, and then sentenced. So, Office of the Principal Prosecutor has different options to apply. But what I'm saying is that I think that there should be some continuous engagement between the lawyers and the OSP, because there's a solution. But if you are not able to come physically, there are other remedies that the OSP can apply.
What do you say to those who suggest that, well, Mr. Ofori-Atta brought this upon himself because he actually told the special prosecutor that he was going to have surgery in March? It didn't happen. April passed by, May passed by. He was given up to the 2nd of June to appear. And it was some days to that date that he suddenly said, no, I'm now going to have surgery. So the thing he said was going to happen didn't happen. No communication about that. And then suddenly, when he's due to arrive, suddenly it's going to happen again. So, what do you say to those who say, well, Mr. Ofori-Atta brought this upon himself, and it's no surprise that the special prosecutor does not believe him and is not willing to give him any further leeway?
When it comes to health matters, one can't be so sure. You can wake up in the morning and by evening you are gone. You understand? Or you can be healthy and think that maybe you are strong enough, and the next thing something happens to you. So we can't be too sure.
Communicate for all that time?
Exactly. So maybe there's a question of lack of communication. There's a lacuna as far as the communication between the lawyers and the OSP is concerned. That has to be addressed. But what is important, I think, the willingness on the part of Honorable Kenneth Ofori-Atta's lawyers to explore other means of having that interface. In fact, it is in the interest of the OSP to even take advantage of some of these platforms to do this just for the records, and then say that, okay, I've made every effort to reach Honorable Kenneth Ofori-Atta, I've not been able to reach him, and I'm applying. So you go the extra mile and then take advantage of electronic opportunity to engage him. Of course, you can't be too sure about who is in his presence when you are engaging him, through electronic communication. But there is another option, like we do here. Sometimes a court will be trying a matter, and a witness is unwell, indisposed, probably at the hospital. Sometimes even the judges, they move the courts to the locus to take evidence. Sometimes somebody is so unwell, and the fear is that the person may not survive the next couple of days until the trial terminates. So the court will go and take evidence and preserve the evidence. So these are mechanisms that are available under our law. So I think that the OSP can take advantage of any of them to tick the boxes, so that it won't look like he's being high-handed, he's being insensitive, and so on and so forth.
Is the special prosecutor not just being overly dramatic? What will go wrong if he decides to take advantage of technology and conduct this process without disturbing the man and making him travel all this way? The special prosecutor asks, what is so special about Kenneth Ofori-Atta? But he's a former finance minister like you. Does that not make him special?
I'll be very brief on this, unfortunately, because one, I don't have expertise in the area. Though I did some law, I read around and I do things. I take the lead, on the position of my Attorney General, an official, and you've already stated those positions. But I can also speak from my own experience, just like Honorable Tampuli, said. That's, and many people do not know this place. At a point in time, I had to face interrogation on a number of issues. But I did not speak about them in public on account of advice from my counsel that when a case is in court, you end up perjuring yourself if you are out there.
This matter is not in court yet.
Well, it's in the judicial process. Let me just, put it that way, But at the point when I had to travel, when I was, being called upon by the, authorities to answer, various questions on various issues, at various points I had to notify, the investigating authorities when I had to travel, right? And I did that, regularly, right? You would recall, and then the other principle is, you don't comment on. So you recall that when Honorable Force, was in, was in court, and there was, I think they made a statement, which was, whether taken out of context or whatever, that I had given, authority to him. There was a lot of pressure on me to comment. But I insisted that when the case is in court, that's a principle which I learned, you don't comment on it. And I refrained. When the court, requested my attendance, yes, I did go. And what I also know, interestingly, is that as a former finance minister, at one point, I was going to travel for a consultancy commitment. Right? So it was the court that granted that I could do, my presentation in court through, but my lawyers had to go and make sure that that was okay with the courts or and then with the investigating, agencies. However, the dates for appearance, when I was to do it, online, the date was postponed. And so the day I appeared in court, if you recall, actually the judge even thought that I was outside. But it was in the morning when I got to know I had arrived. So I told my lawyer, and they informed the court, and that's the way in which, I had to appear, to give, back my witness statement, and, yes. So that's an instance where it is my deputy, and I was involved, and as to whether I gave authority or whatever. But the first instance was involved myself in the part of investigation.
So in that case, you were a witness, not a suspect.
Yes. No, okay. But well, I don't know whether I reached the stage of a suspect, because I went into on about 3, different transactions.
A person of
which
interest.
I was, yes, right.
Okay.
But I'm saying that throughout all of that, I refrain from commenting, and taking the lead. So if on this matter, you ask me something, I would, if I'm not sure coming here and we had a position, I don't have access to the OSP, I would rather call and get a position, 1, whether I can comment, and 2, what is it that, I can do, just as others consult me on tax, finance, and other issues. So I'm afraid that's my view on this.
Okay,
yes.
we respect that, and we appreciate it as well.
We are running out of time.
I know. I would have loved to touch quickly on Chairman Wuntumi's adventures in prison
to me
as well.
for 30 seconds.
Yeah. Let's take 30 seconds from each of you on that one. I'll start with Mr. Tampuli.
So the case of Chairman Wuntumi is now over. The drama is over. The way and manner in which he was picked up in front of the CID headquarters was unprofessional, and in fact, it was an affront. And I'm told that there is some amount of tension between the Yoko and the CID, because the CID felt that they didn't show them respect. They invite somebody, and then all of a sudden you come and pick the person up in front of the office. That was most unfortunate, and it will create tension between, security agencies. But what is more important is the fact that the Iyoko's bill conditions violated, some constitutional provisions, especially Article 14(3) and 4, because it says that if you arrest, restrict, or restrain somebody, you must produce the person within 48 hours. And sometimes we mistake it to be after 48 hours. It said within 48 hours. So when 48 hours was approaching, it was the responsibility of Yoko to have taken him. Even if you have given him bail and he wasn't able to satisfy the bill, so long as he was going to continue to be in your custody, the law says that you must do so.
Right.
And then secondly, under Article 14(4), the Constitution also says that you should not make bail conditions too onerous, as if to use it to punish the person of interest or the suspect. Because
do you think the 50 million was onerous?
Because you see, what is bail? You are granting somebody bail in the expectation that the person will come back to continue either the investigation, the interrogation, or to come and continue standing trial. Whether it's 50 million, 10 million, 5 million, 10 million, is of no moment. You just want to ensure that the person would come back. So apart from insisting that two sureties to be justified to bring properties in excess of 50 million and so on and so forth, they could even have done it self-recognizance. And I said it here, Honorable Kobnat Dufour, Junior, Seidu Abanga, and all of that, Agongo and all of that, all of them were giving self-recognizance. You understand? Honorable Ofosu Ampofo, even,
that was the judge's discretion, though, right?
No, they were still under investigation. Even my good friend Richard Jakpa, he never slept in custody for just 1 day.
I meant that Chairman Wuntumi's bill was the judge's discretion.
It was not.
Okay.
It was not. It was at the behest of Yoko. Okay. Nothing had gone to the courts as at the time.
All right.
So I think that next time we should encourage our security agencies to be minded and guided.
A quick one from Mr. Terkper before we wrap it up.
Yeah, it's my understanding from this, that there was the opportunity to have gone to court to, appeal against the, the level of the bond and others. But in the end, the bond was, was posted, and the chairman, is out, and the process, continues. So, yeah.
I thank you both for your time. It's been such a pleasure. It always is, and we hope we can do more of these in the coming days.